Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Thinking Out Loud Live. I'm
Hello,
Ricardo.
I'm Kristen.
So, what we're doing with Thinking Out Loud Live is basically discussing our thoughts on different topics, but mostly mental health, entrepreneurship. This was made possible by Start Day One, which is a nonprofit foundation for mental health and suicide prevention.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Thinking Out Loud Live.
Hold on.
What is that?
So,
Hold on.
we're doing with Thinking Out Loud.
Sorry about that. What is that?
I like when you press.
I didn't hit anything.
Sorry. So,
All I did was go over to the banner that said we're going live soon.
So Start Day One is just a nonprofit foundation. We have a more proactive approach with mental health and helping people. Most organizations are very reactive, where they actually wait for suicidal tendencies and mental health issues. And for us, from our experience, when we talk to people, we learned that it's actually better to do it beforehand, before they get there. It's just like physical health. It's always best to start exercising now than waiting when you're 500 pounds, right? That's true prevention. And so that's what we're kind of treating the same way with mental health. So we have a special guest today. Her name is Mingjie Zhai, and Kristen's going to introduce her.
Yes, so let me pop up her information here. So Mingjie, I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly or not, but she is the founder of The Love Story. It's a new media nonprofit organization where they help individuals transform pain and self-destructive tendencies into behaviors into self-expression. So
Yeah.
trying to turn bad things into positive things. So without further ado, here is Mingjie.
Hey, Mingjie, how's it going?
Good. Thank you, Ricardo and Kristen, for having me on your show. It's good to be
Yeah,
here.
of course.
Of course. Now, where are you calling from again? You're in LA, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we did a quick intro for you, but can you just kind of tell the audience where you're coming from, like what your background is? Like, how did you end up in the mental health space at all, or kind of, right? And what you're doing
Yeah,
now.
how did all this start?
Yeah, where are you coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So my profession is actually originated in teaching. I was an educator for a while, and just being in all different socioeconomic backgrounds, from inner city to middle of the road to private school, I've noticed the same trend, I would say, or the same patterns among all young adults, which is the mental health aspect, the EQ aspect. As a teacher, I was really big on raising the scores, getting them competent to go to college, et cetera, et cetera. But then there was this big elephant in the room, which is emotional intelligence, specifically being able to express what has been suppressed, whether it's coming from multi-generational things that were going on or just like everyday slights. And so it didn't really become a priority for me until I went through my own breakup. And it was a major breakup, and that was about 9 years ago. And it was during that time I went through like a deep, dark moment in my life where I experienced the mental health system that is currently still being perpetuated in America. And they talk about, I think it was like Tupac Shakur who once quoted like the jails make criminals, while the mental health system makes crazy people. Like it's more crazy.
Yeah, you're right.
What I want to say simply, that at least that was my personal experience. So I realized I love what you said, Ricardo, about preventative health, about addressing it early on before it gets, before we suppress it, and then it gets to that boiling point where it's an emergency, and I now understand why there's a 24-hour suicide prevention hotline. I equate it with Sleeping Beauty on the Spindle. I don't know if some of you watched the Disney version of Sleeping Beauty, but there is a scene where, the cursed spindle has this needle, and the curse on Sleeping Beauty is to prick her finger on that needle.
Mhm.
And it doesn't make any sense why someone would go out of their way to get close to a spindle just to prick their finger. But because it's a curse, there's a draw to it. There's a temptation. There's like a seduction, like a dark energy seduction to self-destructive behaviors. And I think that's more common than we would like to be comfortable in acknowledging
Mhm.
in the human experience in our society, whether in the lens of different cultures or politics or just mental health, whatever. But it's actually more common than is being talked about. So the Love Story organization started when I initially, it started 5 years ago. Initially, it was designed to just help me. I wasn't thinking about big organization back when. I just needed to get out of my own head. I was sick and tired of going to a system that wasn't working for me personally. I didn't identify, I resisted identifying myself as mentally ill.
Mhm.
I have a mental illness diagnosis, but that stigma placed on me only made it worse, not better. And then I found myself taking these psychotropic medications that were actually to my detriment. It was like the lesser of two evils. Like, do I go through the harrowing experience of feeling my feelings that are overwhelming and emotional at times, or do I go through the medication system that, I would call it legal drug dealing, because
Yeah.
dependent, like you would become dependent on any off-label black market drugs. You literally become dependent upon that specific psychotropic, in addition to shaky leg syndrome, or I don't know, suicidal ideations again. And what else? Like all sorts of neurotic kind of side effects.
Yeah.
Insomnia, diarrhea, like all sorts of crazy stuff. Right? Like you see those commercials back when they had like a bunch of like, I don't want to call out any particular drug, but like, let's say a drug for like sleeping, you need to sleep more. And then at the very end, like the last 5 seconds of the commercial, someone who's really good at like quick speech is like, oh, here's all the side effects.
Right. You might not be able to sleep. Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, I started the Love Story organization. I started interviewing artists, but before I interviewed artists, I was interviewing just random people on the streets on heartbreak, their experience with breakups, how it was like, et cetera, et cetera. And then I actually got a nice sizable, I would say qualitative data, or people actually opening up on camera, or willing to open up on camera. So that inspired me to go back to LA. I did that in the East Coast because, you can always go crazy when it's not your own home, The further you are away from your home base, the more brave you get. At least that's my case. So I was in a wedding dress with a microphone in Boston, in New York, in Washington, D.C., and just asking people about love and loss, and filming it. And that kind of gave me the incentive to go back to LA, make some connective phone calls, and interview artists. And that was the key. That was like the silver lining to all the suffering I'd gone through, was like, okay, how do we take away the stigma of negative emotions without making it an ism, and still being able to express it in a way where there's not a lot of judgment around it? And I realized that is in the music space, that's in the artist space. Because when you're listening to Tupac Shakur, and you're listening to, let's say, Odessa, or whoever it is, artists out there, you could feel the pain, and you can express it, and you're allowed to sing it. You're allowed to cry over it. You're allowed to we glorify our artists because they're able to speak the kind of truths that we're too afraid and ashamed to talk about on our own. So in a way, they become the space where we process that pain in music and lyrics. And so I found it interesting if I could get artists to open up about the inspiration behind a particular album or a particular song, or a particular portrait, then it opens up the conversation in combating stigma itself of negative emotions, and B, the therapy, the healing behind it. I remember interviewing one artist named Alex Vargas, and he had a lot of kind of like nostalgic, I would call it emo kind of songs, but they're beautiful, they're beautiful and deep songs. And so I mistaken him for a sad person, but when I actually met the artist face to face, he's actually a lighthearted person. And I'm like, that's a cognitive dissonance for me. How can your songs be sad and longing and you, the person, be lighthearted and just it feels like he's just walking on feathers, right? And he told me that because he's able to take all that angst inside and then push it into his lyrics, into his songs, and just this transmutation, this alchemy of that pain into the song, he is a lot lighter in person. That's his mental health therapy. And that was that was the moment where it planted the seed for the organization.
Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, we got a lot of, I guess let's go back to everything you mentioned. No, it's cool. Well, one thing that everyone is going to relate to is obviously a breakup, right? So you said that was like 9 years ago. One of the biggest things that we say when we're talking to people is that it's all about changing your perspectives. Because from I guess our personal experience and through research and stuff, every time I talk to people like yourself, where that aha moment or turning point, it's always finally your perspective changed. And that's all you're really trying to do, whether you're listening to music, reading a book for inspirational stories, watching Titanic, it's all of a sudden your perspective changes. And that's all of a sudden, that's when you're able to make a decision. Because everything that we talk about for anyone that's watching they're all going to be meaningless unless you actually make a decision about something. Until you do that, this is knowledge you kind of already know. Everyone pretty much will know what we mentioned, unless we go into scientific stuff. But every time you hear an inspirational quote or motivational quote, you always just say that's true. Oh yeah. You never say, oh my God, that's right. Life is short. What am I doing? It's not a new information. And so when I talk about breakups, one of the biggest things I try to do is all right, I have to be able to change the perspective, right? And I'm sure you were there because we were just talking about this last night. Most of our depression or basically negative perspectives, it's not what you can see about your past, it's what you can't see about your future. Mm-hmm. You just can't seem to see a different future because you dedicated your life and you bonded with this person. It feels like you're not the same person anymore because all you thought about was we were supposed to be together all the way. Well, we were going to get married and die together. What happened? And so that's why you get so lost, because you really put this blueprint of your life that it's now not going to follow. And then you can't visualize a different path. And that's really the hard part. And then it just makes it worse. And I know I talk about this when people pass away. When you're in a big relationship, it's that strong bond. You do everything together. And when you lose that, those moments seems like they never happened, because that was the witness. That person was the proof that I did experience that. I went to this park. I had ice cream here. And now it's all gone. I have no proof that ever happened. And same thing when someone passes away, because people pass away all the time, but how come you don't get sad with all of them, right? But that's why people cry when an artist passes away, because they bonded so much with their songs. Oh my God, that was summer something, that year was so awesome, and now he's gone. And you just feel like, something's missing there.
Part of you is gone.
Yeah, so so I try to change people's perspective with the breakup and the way they think about their breakup. One of the things I say, like, if you truly love the other person, you have to know that you want them to be happy with or without you, because that's actually like true love. It doesn't have to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're forcing that idea, like, yeah, but the only way he's going to be happy if he's with me, like, actually, no, because obviously it didn't quite work out, right? If it's meant to be, I always don't put any pressure. Like, don't think that you're never going to be, because now you're forcing something. It's actually better to just go, you know what, let it change. But when their perspective changes in that way, that, oh, you're actually, because that's when someone really knows love, it's like, oh, you have to let them go. And, the whole let them go, be free. If they come back, they're meant to be, that whole thing. There's a, kind of a truth to that. And so that's one of the ways we try to get people to change their perspective on it. And once you do that, it's easier to make that decision to let go or anything like that. Another thing you mentioned was like, you're in this like dilemma, like, do I take the drugs or do I just go through the emotion? And to me, I always fall more into, the emotion part, because it's DABDA, the 5 stages of grief. You're not allowing yourself to go to acceptance. And that's why a lot of people, they forget what their problems were, but they kept taking the thing and they don't know why they get depressed. But it's because one thing we always mention is like, you have to remedy the cause, not the result, because everything that people are trying to heal, it's just a result. Like your depression, your sadness from a breakup, that's just the result. But that wasn't the cause of it. Like what's causing your pain? That's what really it is. The breakup itself is the pain, right? Not the depression. Depression is just the result. So you really have to change your mindset. A lot of people, or even doctors, society, this, right? Like all these organizations are very reactive. And then what they say is like, well, Mingjie, it looks like you have depression. So take 3 of these a day and you should be all good. And that's all they do. They don't really talk about the breakup and this and that. They don't change your perspective.
Mm-mm. They're just numbing the pain. And like you said, they become very addictive.
Yeah. And you get to the point, you forgot what your pain is.
Right. So the result, they're just fixing the result, but they never really got to the cause of what happened and why.
Exactly. And that's why we actually, named our thing like Start Day One. We're trying to change people's perspectives from dreaming of one day to starting day one. Day one means instead of day 2, day 3. When you go through a breakup, it doesn't take one day and you're like, oh man, I'm ready. I'm ready for another relationship. Bring it on. It's going to take a while. And that's why you have to go through DABDA, right? You got to go through the denial, anger, bargaining, depression. And I always tell people, depression is the last stage. You're trying to get to acceptance. And when you get there, you're going to feel so much better. But man, this part sucks balls, right? Like it sucks. Everyone knows. And the way I try to relate that, actually, when people say they're depressed, I always say, good, you're almost there. Like you're almost there. You're not in denial, so that's awesome. Like he's not breaking up with me. Is he crazy? Like if you're still there, we have a problem. So you're already at depression. So it's like everything at the end is always hardest. Whether it's the marathon, right? The very end is not the easiest. Final exams when you're trying to be a doctor or just graduating college, that's always the hardest. Pretty much anything you do, that's always the hardest, right? And so I tell people like depression, you have to go through it, but it's just your perspective on your depression. Right? They make you feel like depression was abnormal. Like,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
On that, because it's almost like people will go like, shouldn't you be out and stop your crying? Like, what are you doing? Right?
Well, first, I want to say you brought up a really good point on when it comes to breakups, because I realize that there's so I believe 3 things. There's 3 characteristics that define true love. Okay. One is God is love. I'm a faith-filled person, so I believe there is a God. That's just my personal truth. So God is love. 2, love is defined. and it's defined in 1 Corinthians 13, which is a beautiful 13-verse scripture that really encapsulate what love is: patience, kindness, doesn't envy, doesn't boast, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the third component, the third one, is both the root cause of suffering and also the most powerful transformative aspect of love. It is why breaking up is so hard and why it's so hard letting go. And that right there, the third quality of love, is free will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's free will.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If there's no free will, it's not love.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Any kind of force, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, when you mentioned the whole aspect of letting someone go and wanting them to be happy, even if that happiness is a state that you no longer share with them, that is an act of true love. And I think that part comes with suffering, because I believe God wants us not to just understand love, but to understand the depth of love. I call it the Z factor. We live in a 3-dimension reality: X, Y, and Z, right? Time, space, and distance, or depth. So it's like the depth of love can only be revealed in the contrast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually, we were mentioning this before, the whole yin yang thing too, right? The way I explain this part to help them with their perspectives is that to compare their life, it's like a movie, right? It's to me, I always tell people living life to the fullest is actually impossible, because you have to go through the struggle to appreciate it and all that stuff. And it's just human nature to take life for granted. It's really just based on law of supply and demand. There's a reason they say it's the law of, right? It's like you can't get away from it. It's just psychology. And too much of something, you tend to just, the value just decreases, right? And then the demand, and the demand for it is not as much and all that stuff. Like, if it's like when everyone's wearing the same thing, you don't want to wear the same thing, the demand goes down, And, girls are always going like, man, I really want to look for nice guys. They're everywhere, guys. They're everywhere. But you don't want those because it's too much niceness. You need that asshole-ish, that little tinge, that little bit of tinge. Somehow it's because too much supply, and then the value of it just kind of decreases. Like, he's just too nice, and that's really not what you want. You want that challenge, and it's just something that we all need. So when I tell people about that whole the necessity of the struggle and challenge, it's kind of like sports or video games or movies, right? In sports or video games, the level of difficulty always increases, not decrease. People when games decrease, you don't play that because it's not challenging. It's not even intriguing. You don't even want to play it. And that's when kids do the wrong things in there, right? They run over civilians when it's a car game, things like that, because it's like, this is stupid. Mm-hmm. They actually like the ones that are difficult, right? The more difficult it is, the more fulfilling when you defeat it. And then you go through all the way. And it's the same thing with sports. Like, the Olympics is not the easiest at all. It always hard. Then why are they trying to make their life so hard? It's the hardest thing. But it's funny, when it comes to people in our own lives, we actually see it as such an obstacle rather than going, it's making my life interesting. Mm-hmm. And they just want to delete it, right? We're watching this movie about memory, the memory is what makes us and this and that. But at the same time, I'm looking at that like, yeah, but most of it should be lived with what you think your future is going to be, because things from the past obviously influences you on, who you are, what your goals are going to be, what your passion is. Because without that, you won't know what your passion is. It's impossible. Like, you wouldn't know to be, playing in a band and music if you never played music, you just won't know it until you do it. Yeah. So, but just like movies, if you take away all the conflict, all the challenges in the movie, it's not even a movie. It's a documentary now.
You're not going to want to watch it.
Yeah.
Documentaries have conflicts.
Yeah. Right. Even a documentary.
Yeah, I've never watched anything without conflict.
Right.
Even a Disney movie, everything.
Everything.
Bambi, even
always
everything.
This and
always
then
the
this,
conflict.
right? Something's always, like, oh my God, is evil gonna win? Like, but always, even I think we talked about this with superheroes. Like, if Superman, I mean, it is only kryptonite. Like, that is the only weakness. But yet, of course it exists. Because if you took that out, you are not going to watch any Superman movies because he's always going to win. Like, so what happened? He won with nothing?
I mean, he wins anyway, but he still has that
still know
conflict.
he wins.
He triumphs over it.
Right.
There's a conflict and he triumphs over it.
Right. So it's that knowing what the future is going to be. And so those are like big things that people need to understand. And that's a great way, when I talk to kids, video games and stuff like that, when they know like, oh, I'm supposed to, the more you struggle, the more you actually appreciate life. It's kind of like what you were saying, the heartbreak makes you appreciate the next one. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. I'm hoping that you learn from this experience so that the next one is supposed to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because some people don't learn because they never change their perspective on it. They always like,
That's what karma is. Karma is repeating the same thing and doing the same thing. That's what karma is. Repeating the same patterns, not learning from the previous experience and applying it to the new, similar but different experience and seeing the same results. That's karma. But,
I call it insanity. No, like I've learned a lot of people. Most people are more insane than you think because people are always complaining about things they do nothing about. Mm-hmm. I just don't have enough time. What are you doing about that? Still watching TV every day, though? You're still...
For 5 hours or playing video games for 5 hours
still
a day.
Wasting time, still waking up at 2 p.m. Like, so until you change, nothing's going to happen. So, they complain about that. Like, oh, I just don't make enough money. Are the resumes out? Are you searching? No? Really?
You're learning a new skill, something, anything.
Even relationships, like, oh my God, he's so annoying. Same dude, 5 years now, same complaint. So I don't know. Have you changed anything? And it's funny.
That's so my sister. Sorry, I just need to. She's not watching right now.
But that happens all the time. It's like it happens all the time. They complain about things they just do nothing about, and they expect a different result doing the same exact thing. But they're going like, when is it going to change now? Like, well, something has to change for you have to change something for something to change.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of pain and depression. That's actually in my changed, transformed perspective. I realized, looking back in retrospect, that it had to be. I had to get down. I had to spiral down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The descending, or in the hero's journey, in the monomyth of the hero's journey, it's crossing over from the ordinary to the extraordinary world. Because pain will bring you to your knees. Pain will get you to stay still and actually process what we've been avoiding from our monkey minds, to just like freeze us so that we can just. It's designed for us to process it. It's a metamorphosis archetype of going inside the cocoon. You're a caterpillar, but you got to go inside the cocoon. You got to get all wrapped up and tightened. It's going to get hot. It's going to get very uncomfortable. But in that process of inner turmoil through the pain, there is a chance at transforming into a butterfly. I say a chance because it goes back to free will again.
Yeah.
Once you're in that pain, you have two choices: self-destruction or self-expression.
Right. That's the perspective
That's
always talk about.
Yep.
It's always a perspective. It's either here or here. Which way are you going to go?
There's
no decision.
Exactly. And we actually, this is our brand, right? So one of the things we tell people, because that, it all starts with a decision. And it's really, you always have a decision. And our full motto is actually to live life without regret and accept challenges that are worth the risk. And that's why we said accept challenges worth the risk, because the challenge is set in front of you and it's up to you to accept it or not. And even though it's pronounced fuck it, it persuades people to say fuck it more. The reason we wanted that is because the only time we actually say that phrase is only until after we've already made a decision. That's the only time. The reason you say is you actually confirm to yourself that you're going to follow through and commit to the decision you just made. You never back out when you say that phrase, ever, because you're already committed. And that's powerful. That's how you leave bad relationships or go on vacation or let go of, bad feelings. But I definitely agree with the idea of the cocoon, the transformation, because I see that when people go through trauma, the PTSD people, depression, breakups, loss, someone passing away, what they're doing is we're constantly changing. The Mingjie now is not Mingjie 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. They're all different because we all change, all of us. And trauma, breakup, pain, things like that accelerates that change, accelerates it. And the thing is, people go through this problem of preventing themselves from evolving. You lost someone, this, that, no, I want to be that same person now. I don't want to change. And so they take the pills, they take alcohol, they do this. I don't want to deal with this. No, I don't want to change. No way. No. And it gets worse and worse because they're trying to keep that same person instead of being this other version, because they can't fucking see a future version of themselves that they like. They think, nope, I'm alone forever. No one's going to like me. That was the one. That's it. And it's never going to happen. Or when someone, someone passes away, it's just oh my God, I can't live life without this person anymore. And this and that. Nothing's going to be the same. Well, it's actually never going to be the same with or with them. It's always going to change. And so we're always kind of, and that's the stuff, right? You mentioned, dude, it's one way or the other. It's always, I shit you not. Every time I talk to people, it always boils down to their perspective. One thing I do want to mention, because I come across people that say that, for example, I've asked people, so when do you think we say fuck it? And they're like, oh, when you've had enough. And I'm just actually, enough is not really an amount. It's a decision, because it's been enough 10 years ago. So just putting it out there. So it's actually, you don't actually need to feel that pain, to go through it. It's just that somehow you're camouflaging the pain or doing whatever it is, but you don't need to feel that pain if you had just changed your perspective. But pain is what seems you need to change your perspective, but it's not necessary. I got to tell people, because they think I guess when I'm rock bottom, that's when I'll, when I've had enough, that's when I'll leave this relationship. Why don't you leave now? Why are you waiting for rock bottom if it sucks here? Why are you waiting for this one or this one or this one? Right. And rock bottom is what you think what it is. I don't know what you think rock bottom is. Rock bottom keeps going, and you thought this was here, but then you went here, and then you went here. And it really hurts people, because and all it is because they will not change their perspective. And pain, trauma, things like that are great teachers if they take the lesson, right? When they don't learn, like you said, if you don't learn from this, it's just not going to be a good life. It's kind of like playing a video game that you don't learn every time that you go to this way, you lose. You're never going to get out of this game. And it's the same thing with every sport, same thing with anything. And so we always try to change this. All right, what can I do to help your perspective? And one of the things that I learned that comes before the perspective is actually purpose. Mm-hmm. When you don't have a sense of purpose, it's that thing of I don't know where I am. I don't know where to go. And yeah. So one of the best ways to actually figure out your sense of purpose is, one, just fucking doing things. You're never going to know until you deal with it. I tell people, how are you going to know you want to be the best surfer if you've never surfed before? If you've never picked up a guitar, how do you know you're going to be the best guitarist or want to love that? You're not. You're never going to know. But your sense of purpose is based on your experience and everything else. And there's purpose for different areas of your life. I have a different sense of purpose with a relationship, different sense of purpose with my clothing line, a different sense of purpose with my nonprofit. It's always different, but at least I have some kind of direction. When you don't know where you're going, then you're always going to be lost. Like, you're always going to be lost, always. So you need to figure out, well, where are you going? Like, where are you trying to go? What's your purpose? And people always ask the wrong things. They always say, oh, what is my life's purpose? Or what's my purpose in life? And it's just like, man, that's the wrong thing to ask, because you're trying to come up with your passion. You're trying to come up out of thin air instead of from your experience or whatever, or what you're doing. That stuff comes afterwards. So what I have to tell people is you have to ask yourself, what in life gives you purpose? That actually makes it more like, well, when I do this, I feel this and this. Like, oh, maybe that's the route. Once you get that, that's where you start developing perspectives. Because even though, let's say, I want to be a musician, but your perspective is going like, dude, you're broke without a joke. Your mom's going to kill you. And that's your perspective. Well, you're never going to do it. So until you change your perspective, you're just never going to make that decision, ever. Whether it's leaving a relationship. And that's what I learned. Like, no one makes a decision until you change their perspective. Mm-hmm. People go to rehab not because they change their perspective. They forced them. Kind of what you said. There wasn't free will. You told them you have to go or else I'm going to abandon you. Like, so they're like, all right. And then they call it, oh, it fell off the wagon. Like, no, actually, he's been on it the whole time. I don't know what wagon you're looking at, Yeah. He just happened to freaking be on a different wagon, I guess, But it's not helping them unless they make the decision to go. And when you force things like that, it has to come out from us, And that's kind of like what I learned. And I want to bring up that stuff, like when you talk about the pills, the dependency. Was there a certain point where you went, whoa, I really need to stop this? Like, was there a point where you had to go through that, where you kind of went, why am I taking these pills? Like, I don't know if I should be taking them.
Yeah, I had the beautiful, tragic blessing of my body reacting to it very bad from the very beginning.
Okay.
One pill I was suicidal. The next one, my body broke out in rashes. A few ones I did, and the third one, lithium, almost killed me. I was almost a zombie. I couldn't even take care of myself, and I was completely disabled. So it's like I had the beautiful, tragic blessing of my body reacting to it from the get. So it didn't have to get to that state of dependency. But what I will say too, that saying, like, everyone's like 9 degrees separated from Kevin Bacon or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
7 degrees separated from Kevin Bacon.
Oh, yeah.
So I look at purpose as everyone has different unique purposes, but we all are 7 to 8 degrees separated from the big why. And that why always is the same constant, which is love. It always goes back to love. Although we are all unique and different in our life journeys, and everything changes, whether it's like our skin colors down the generations, our infrastructure in our society, businesses, whatever's right, left, that line constantly, gets redrawn over and over again. But I do believe that there is a ever constant, just like the speed of light, just like the law of gravity, there's a law of love that is constant.
Yeah.
So I do believe that if you could imagine in my analogy that the earth has a core center, and then, it spits out electromagnetic waves, and that wave, gets differentiated into different aspects, right? Terraforming the rest of the earth. Well, that's like love and purpose. Everyone has unique purposes in life, but how it becomes a purpose always has to do with love. Without love, in the absence of love, there is no purpose. Mm-hmm. It goes hand in hand. People
that's true.
Purpose when they realize there's a level of self-sacrifice, that you're actually doing something for someone else just because. When you learn the discipline of patience and kindness in the journey of obtaining said thing, whatever that said thing is. And I do believe that the way of obtaining X, Y, and Z is more important than actually obtaining X, Y, and Z. I do believe that if you do it in a non-loving way, then that thing you obtain becomes empty and meaningless. But if you do it by the way of love always, then whatever thing you obtain, whether big or small, that will always be meaningful.
Yeah, what's funny, the reason I definitely kind of believe in that, one thing about, or at least actually the two things that's pretty much constant with purpose that people don't really know when they're trying to figure out their purpose is that, one, your sense of purpose always is like a verb. It's never a noun. When you're saying like, I want to be the richest person as your purpose, that's not going to work out because it's a noun, or I'm going to be the best this, or I'm, whatever it is. When it's a noun, it just never, because it's finite when it's a noun, but when you have a verb, it becomes like a cause, right? So a cause becomes more of a sense of purpose when it's a verb. It's ongoing. It never ends. It's something that'll keep on going. So that's one. And two, your sense of purpose almost always, it's never for you. Almost always. Your purpose is almost always for someone else, for the audience, for the people. It's never like, I just want to be able to, my sense of purpose is to live happily and have all the money and little Lamborghinis and mansions and stuff. That's my purpose. It's like, that's not a purpose. Like, not a purpose. Purpose is
that's
like,
a goal.
I want to help as many people as I can with their problems in this area of the industry, blah, blah, blah. So they can live a happier life. And if I can make money from that, awesome. That becomes a sense of purpose because that never ends. Whatever it is that you're telling people, but it always has to be a verb. It can't be a noun. Like, I want the best platform that can help people. I'm like, yeah, that's going to stop. You have a platform. Now what? Like, I want to have the best platform then. Like, all right, now you're the best platform. So when you stop innovating, that's why people end up not innovating anymore. Is because their purpose or their mission was finite. It was a noun. It doesn't work. And I still see that in the startup realm. We're trying to help businesses and startups trying to figure out their mission. These mission-driven startups, it's always best, obviously, when you have a mission, but it doesn't work when you're trying to be a noun. And so, but those two combinations is what creates a purpose. It's what gives you purpose. It's not about you, it's about other people. What value are you actually providing people? And it better be a fucking verb, or else it's not a purpose. And once you have that actually just kind of helps people. And that's why I do believe, like, when you do that for other people, it's definitely not for hate, right? Well, that's a bad purpose, man. So the love usually ends up being a love for other people. So you have to have that. And then that becomes infinite. It just keeps on going because you just want to send out that love, share the love or whatever. And so I think that that's what really, goes out there. So the reason I was asking earlier about the, the pharmaceutical stuff, because that's kind of one of the major things we're like trying to change, because people are under this assumption that depression is the cause. Again, the cause is a verb. Depression is a noun. You cannot say that depression is the cause. In your old situation, well, I can't seem to let go of the pain from my breakup. That's now a verb. That is what's causing you to be depressed. That's why you're in depression. It's not, I have depression. Oh man, now I'm going to be miserable about my breakup. Fuck. That's how doctors treat it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you have depression. That would be this pill. Oh, anxiety? Hold on. That'll be this pill. But you're not even looking at the cause. when you're feeling depressed, it's your perspective that actually causes it. It's whether it's your pessimism, but I can't even say pessimism, because the pessimism is because you have negative perspective. So every time it goes back to the perspective, every fucking time. And so until you change that, you're always going to feel it that way. So anyway, I want people's perspective to change strictly just from that alone, because of the nocebo effect from the organizations and doctors saying that it's depression is the cause is killing people, like completely killing people, because you just took away free will. You can't do anything about it. You have depression. Sorry.
Like you said, the one pill that you took that was supposed to help your depression made you more suicidal.
Right. But either way,
how does that even make sense? That doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah, but either way, they were just trying to remedy the result. Depression, people, depression is an emotional, natural response. Like natural emotional response. It is the result to the response of what your perspective is. That's it. Don't take pills because your perspective is that and causing yourself. You're causing your pain. No one is causing your pain. Like no one. The breakup, no one's doing it to you. Like no one. Someone passing away, no one's. It's already in the past. It's been 10 years. You're the only one doing it. So people with PTSD and all this, it's really, you just can't seem to see a different future. I don't know what's stopping you, but you have to change your perspective. You have to let go. You have to change your perspective on something. The only time people understand that is when they're somewhere, when they're in a good place. You now see your past in a different place. They say things like, oh, things happen for a reason, or else I wouldn't have written this book. You know, stuff like that. You only say that when you feel good. You never say when you feel like you're getting punished. You know, things happen for a reason. That's why I'm a loser. That's just, you never say when you're in a negative point in your time. And that's the only time people actually tell you that. It's like, well, everything happens for a reason. Well, because you won the fucking lottery. Like, like, you know, but it's the only time they're said. But until you change your perspective. And so I'm trying to change people's idea about mental health, because every time you're blaming this invisible enemy called depression, anxiety, PTSD, no one's getting cured because you're fighting no one. Like you're fighting absolutely no one. You don't even know what you're fighting. I hear people, it drives me nuts. I've been dealing with depression since 2016. You know the exact date. No shit. And it's still here. Where is it? It just kind of comes out. People don't know, it's just the result. It's like happiness. Happiness is not constant. When someone's happy, doesn't mean they're just happy forever. And when someone passes away, like, oh, no shit, he passed away, huh? No, they don't do that. They get depressed because they have to. It's a natural response. They have to. If they don't get depressed, if you don't get depressed from a breakup, that's weird, or you actually didn't love the person, period. Period.
You know, you brought up a good point on nouns and verbs.
Yeah.
In Taoism, they talk about the Tao, and the Tao is always a verb, because the Tao is the way. It's the way you're going about it. It's from point A to point B, and then how to get from point A to point B is more important than actually getting to B. So going back to your analogy of the breakup, you know, why do people suffer longer than they need to suffer?
Yeah.
It's because they're still fixated on B, not realizing how to get to point B in such a way that is loving.
Yeah.
And
yeah. It's an action, right?
Yeah, and it's paradoxical, because you almost have to let go of B to find B again, because that B is no longer right there in your
It's
eye.
constantly moving.
Yep.
It's a moving target.
Yeah, it's a moving target. It's
a
somewhere.
moving target.
But
Yeah.
in order for you to get to that new place of B, you have to focus on what's right in front of you, which is called the way, which is present perfect moment. It's present. It's right here, right now.
Yeah.
So, which is why meditation is so beautiful, which is why creative expression is beautiful. Because in creative expression, you have control over that. You have no control over B, over a future fixated image of what you think is your perfect image of I've gotten it, or I've succeeded, or whatever, you know. It's how you succeed that matters more than the success. And once you let go of B will appear. It's so weird. It's so paradoxical.
It's true, though. That's true.
Mystical. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how that kind of works, right? It's like at the same time though, when you can't visualize that future, so we're reading this book, Personality Isn't Permanent. It's actually really awesome because he talks about, how we're always evolving. And basically, and it's funny, I applied for entrepreneurship. I always saw entrepreneurship as like, oh, you're just held accountable, but you hold yourself accountable to monetize the solutions to the problems. Basically, that's what entrepreneurship is to me. And I always thought, like, once you're an entrepreneur, basically it's like you have no boss, right? Unless you have investors and stuff. But like overall, you don't have a boss. But now that I'm like reading the book, it kind of made more sense. Your future self is actually your boss. Mm-hmm. Like, does that person that you want to be, or you're trying to be, or you hope to be, are you doing the things that would bring you to that person? For example, when you're, after your breakup, I seem to end up going to the breakup, right? A lot of people have this problem that they think they can't be happy ever again, so they can't see it. But they have to try and see that there's this alternative, that possibility, that hope. Like, this is the happy version of you. You'll find someone else. There's plenty of people out there, things like that. But when you can't visualize that, you'll never kind of get there. That's why they have these goals. But the thing is, and goals are being used wrong. They use it too fast. It's kind of like motivation. Motivation is actually almost completely useless until it's after a decision's been made. When you do motivation before, it doesn't work. To me, it's
force. It becomes force, not attraction.
Yeah. So
yeah.
The line, the way I've learned it is, it starts with purpose, and then you need inspiration to change your perspective if need be, but perspective comes to play. And then after perspective, once you change that, that's how you use the power of the decision. And so now you have that decision, and that's actually when goals happen afterwards, because now you know what to attain. Well, now you set goals. When you set goals here, it's like, yeah, but you don't even want to do it. Like, what are you setting goals for? And they're almost never going to do it. And motivation is after the decision. It's to keep you going. That's what really goals are for, is to keep motivating you for, micro targets, and that's really the only time it comes to you. So, yeah, so even though it's a moving target, it's always evolving. It's kind of like, who was that one? Who's your hero? And he said, was it McConaughey? He said his hero is
himself
me.
In 10 years.
Yeah, it's myself in 10 years. And then supposedly someone asked him again, he was 10 years later, so have you become the hero that you wanted to be? He's like, no, because the hero is the 10 years from now.
Yeah.
It's unachievable. But when you think that way, it's like, that's what keeps you going that route. So when you see that, and that's why people like the vision board, things like that, because when you can't see yourself doing it, you're not going to make it. Like, you're just not. When you assume you're not going to find someone else, you're going to get really depressed because you think there was only one person for you in the whole entire fucking billion world. Like, one person, that was it. And so now you're miserable forever because you just won't change your perspective that there's a possibility that someone might be better, So in any case, it's like, again, it just comes down to love. Like, that's what it's for. Like, you have to release. If you couldn't do it, it's not one-sided, right?
Right.
When you love, you give to give. You don't give to expect. Like, you don't go like, yeah, but I put in so much time. It's like, I know, but it just wasn't meant to be, man. Like,
Yeah.
But that loss though sucks.
So I have a question. I know you have written 2 books.
5. Actually, I've written 3 and produced 2 diaries.
Yeah, tell us a little more about that before we end this.
Because we're going to end soon, so we want to promote your books and whatever we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the component of that moment where you're really sad, I do believe that a critical component to moving the needle forward from someone stuck in that trauma or in that critical moment of depression is compassion. And compassion can't be manufactured and it can't be forced. It has to be authentic. And so in that context, I realized that it's actually more powerful to bring two people who mirror each other in their suffering together in a, I would say, in a silver lining opportunity, because I called the mirror neuron, well, I didn't call it that. Scientifically, mirror neuron effect. So the Love Story Journal, what you see here is it's a collection of artists who have talked about their pain and painful experiences in life, what it was actually like for them when they were going through that deep darkness.
Yeah.
And our sponsor, Light Portrait, gave us the AR technology so that you can actually turn a lot of these portraits that we have here into a video.
Cool.
Watch the actual, I would say the actual share of someone, but spoken almost like as if they're speaking about, well, they are speaking about their past,
Yeah.
But when we're interviewing them, they're actually at the peak of their creative expression. But when we ask about what it was like before, what started it, it always comes down to pain.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually interviewing them about their passion. What you see here is Donnie O'Malley. Hold on a second. Let me see if I could give you a quick demo here.
Yeah. Let's do it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that online, I believe. Like I checked it out. I'm like, oh, that's really neat.
Yeah. So this one here is Samuel J. And you just
there it is. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, so you can actually watch
video.
The interview.
Oh wow.
That's cool.
So they share about, so they do a little performance. Some of them do a little performance.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And he just said, love is surrendering. Love is not resisting. So it's just perfect.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that was one thing I was going to mention earlier too, about being able to surrender. But yeah, what's the other book that you got there?
Yeah, so the other one, this is the one I've written. It's called The Love Story Playbook, and it's designed for someone to journal first their pain, just the fullness of their tragedy. I think it's very important to journal your tragedy first before arcing it into a love story. Mm-hmm. But this book is basically a very thin book on how to arc your character in the story, because I do believe that if you're projecting your real life into a fictional character and story, and you're aligning the art imitates life, life imitates art dynamic while you're writing and living out life. If you stay true to the character arc, this is the guidebook on how to be in the discipline, and it's a discipline, it's a discipleship, how to be in the discipline of love. You will naturally and organically arc your tragedy into a love story.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, when the character is arcing into love.
Yeah.
I like that. That's really nice. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know we have to go now, but thank you so much for taking the time.
And sharing your story. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sure you're gonna have another book, so
there will be.
We're gonna have to get you back here again and discuss more stuff, and let us know what you're up to, and just to let you know all the things that we're doing for Start Day One. The reason we raise funds and stuff is basically to help proactively, right? To reach out. So we're actually raising the funds so that we can produce these, more content and stuff like that. But mostly it's also for sending speakers out to different schools, colleges, whatever kind of venue events. because there's just nothing like person to person. So we try to raise money so that whatever venue or what organization's asking, that they don't have to pay for it. It's free, because we have to do this proactively, and they tend to wait, until someone commits suicide or someone's depressed. It's always the case. Everyone's always very reactive. Let's look for the symptoms. You shouldn't wait for the symptoms. You need to get out there already. So we're actually trying to raise funds for that. And, we're going to keep you on our list of like potential speakers. So, if we can get you out there, if there's a school or somewhere you're trying to, where you would like to speak or talk, let us know, and maybe we can help you kind of raise funds. And then, because people like yourself, we talk to so many people that want to do good, but it gets expensive when you keep doing that, and they can't afford it. So like, well, what if we can help out? What if we can pay for the travel expenses, hotel, or just for the talk itself, for your time? And so that's what we do. So thank you so much for everything. We really appreciate it. Hope everyone learned a lot. And until next time.
Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Mingjie, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Mingjie.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Have a great one.
Yeah, see you guys.
Bye.
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 I thought I had that.